Hello and welcome to Raising Those Spirits. I'm Steve,
And I'm Sam.
and we made it to episode 20.
This is like a full year. I think we say that every week, but I
Yeah,
feel
but
like this is actually a full year.
I think we are officially, um, a full year in. I meant to pull up the SoundCloud before we did this to confirm that, but I didn't.
That's
Um,
okay. We're not prepared. We're not prepared people.
Yeah, I had a job interview earlier today, so that's what I'm going to blame my unpreparedness on. Our first episode was 10 months ago? That can't be right.
Okay, so let's think of it. If it was 10 months ago, we recorded 2 weeks before it was released.
I know we did our pilot in March because our first
Oh, right.
meeting was in February. We filmed the pilot in March. 2 weeks after that, we did the first episode 2 weeks. Yeah, I guess that kind of lines up. So you and me have been doing this for over a year, but
Oh, yeah.
I feel like the other people, I wish it would give me a date that I uploaded this. YouTube will. I'm wasting so much of this opening. This is a bad opening.
I mean, you're the editor. You can cut this if you want to.
Yeah,
Or
this
you could
is
just make everybody sit and wait while we Google
we're
ourselves.
gonna they're gonna take this May 5th. Our first episode came out on Cinco de Mayo. Do you think we prepared drinks for that?
Cinco de Mayo? I'm sure
Yeah.
I had something.
No.
Don't
I mean,
remember.
like, do you think we thought that through enough in the first episode to have actually done Cinco de Mayo drinks? I feel like we did Mother's Day drinks because our first episode was Mother's Day.
Oh, man. That's true. We did do
Anyway,
Mother's Day.
we've been almost doing this episodically for a year, but me and Sam have been doing this officially because we filmed the pilot, I think, this week a year ago. So happy anniversary to us.
Aw, happy anniversary, Steve.
So
So,
what have you been up to?
good God, I don't even remember what I've been up to. I think the this isn't even a good story. There's this is a terrible story, but I'm
I'm
gonna tell
glad
it
it's on
anyway.
the podcast. I'm glad we're
Here we go. There's a thrift store that I keep being near and never getting to. That is like a movie prop thrift store. I really want to get to it. And in the last probably month, I've been within a few feet of it 3 times and have not had opportunity to go in. And I just need to make that happen. What is wrong with me? I can't get myself into a thrift store that I'm next to that I actively want to go into. I don't think they have like the best movie props, but it's there, and I keep not doing it. I think I have a mental block.
I mean, it's great until you finally go into it.
Yeah, and then I find out it's not what I wanted it to be. It might also be like secretly just a cafe.
I mean, also good.
I mean, yeah. It's right next to a kids like trampoline park. You know those indoor trampoline
Yeah,
parks.
I've been looking at one.
So we were over there. I was in the area for a concert a couple of weeks back, and then I was there again for my friend's daughter's birthday. It's called Hollywood Salvage in Westboro, Massachusetts. I think it's cool. I keep being next to it and not going in.
Okay.
That's what I do. You know what the problem is? It's actually the weather's really nice. So we're getting out and doing things instead of being creepy introverts like we had been for the last several months. And we keep wanting to do things that are bright and sunny and not creepy or spooky at all. So I don't know what's going on. I gotta do that pastel Halloween we talked about last year once Easter rolls around.
Oh, great. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm gonna do something. I don't know what I'm gonna do. I gotta do something. I gotta get some spooky eggs. Let's start thinking about this now. There's Easter.
Easter is a while off, but not for our listeners. So
No,
it's
because you'll be hearing this in 2 weeks.
yeah, it's in late April. So,
Hmm.
yeah, it's really late this year. It's April 17th. They will be hearing this episode on the 5th. So, even they will still have almost 2 weeks.
Steve, we need to commit to doing something cool for Pastel Halloween.
Okay, we'll have to
Like,
report on it afterwards, though.
yeah, but we'll let people know what we're doing.
Oh, yeah.
I'm gonna go to that movie prop store. That's how I'm going to celebrate.
I'm going to open a tab right now to remind myself about Pastel Halloween.
Yes, for anybody who doesn't remember Pastel Halloween from our initial episodes a year ago, it is combining Halloween and Easter because we're at the 6 month point. That means we're going to be getting closer to Halloween than we are being further away from Halloween.
Yeah, I guess
Does that
Pastel
make sense?
Halloween is technically April 30th because
Right.
it's exactly so we can actually talk about it next episode.
Okay. Topic picked.
Awesome. See,
Okay.
this is done.
Thank.
This
I'm
is the
glad that everybody
process.
made it. I'm glad that everybody made it to our pitch meeting this week. That's what this just was.
You
Oh
know,
my god.
this is great. This gives them time to pitch us ideas.
Send us your ideas for Pastel Halloween. We are RTSpiritsPod on your various social media platforms. Let us know. What are you gonna do? You gonna slaughter a bunny? Are you gonna
Oh,
paint a
don't
jack o'
slaughter a
lantern?
bunny. I did that 2 years ago and it ruined me.
It was already dead when you purchased it, right? You didn't kill the
Yes.
bunny.
No, I didn't kill the bunny, but I had to like dress the bunny.
This was for
And
food. Steve is not a serial killer.
yeah, no, I was just like I think it was New Year's Day. I was gonna do like a big rabbit roast recipe because I like rabbit. I've had rabbit in the past. I've just never prepared it. And there's this great duck recipe I have in the Williams Sonoma French cookbook. And in the next page, so if you're looking at the duck recipe, the next page is this rabbit recipe that I've always looked at. And we live kind of in the country here, and so like they had rabbit, and I was like, oh, awesome! I'm gonna do it, and it was like the worst way to start off a new year.
Yeah, no, you told me the whole story of like having to butcher a rabbit. I mean, hats off to you for actually doing it. I think if I had the knife in my hand and then the rabbit carcass in my other hand, I would just call it a day and order a pizza.
We kind of ended up doing that, which I felt even worse about because this was already a dead rabbit. Like we just couldn't eat it. I cooked it and everything, and we were just like, it's like ashes in my mouth. Like I'm not enjoying this because of the journey I took to get here. Did you
We
ever
should do.
watch? Go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead. I
Did
was gonna say we should do like a spooky kids food episode
Oh, that would be
where we make
great.
like mummy hot. Oh my god, let's do mummy hot dogs. Okay, you're still in the pitch meeting. You're still in the pitch meeting. We'll do mummy hot dogs and what else is spooky kids food?
Um,
Haunted popcorn. I don't know what that is. I made that up just now.
yeah, I don't know all the spooky food. We've talked about spooky food in a previous episode, actually, so it's a shame that we don't actually remember a lot of it.
Yeah, that is pretty
Because
problematic.
we did an entire episode on food.
We did.
This is the problem with recording after working at 8 o'clock at night.
It's like we're old
I did
because I'm so tired all of the time.
all of the
Also, we're
time.
dads.
Yeah,
Why did we decide to do a dad podcast? We're old.
we
We need to be in
because
bed.
the pandemic happened, we were supposed to do a food and
Oh,
spirits
yeah, we're just
podcast, and then the pandemic happened, and we couldn't go to any restaurants or haunted inns. So here we are.
that's true. Oh, that is actually what happened. Oh my God, they've been doing this for so long.
Yeah, I. So did you ever watch Kitchen Confidential?
Kitchen Confidential, the Bradley Cooper sitcom
Yes,
based on Anthony Bourdain's book. Yes, I did watch that because it had Nicholas
Nicholas Brendan
Brandon.
in it. Exactly. Um,
I was such a big Buffy fan.
and it came out close enough to Buffy ending that we were still trying to support everyone. Um, there was an episode. It's one of the only things I remember about the show where they order rabbit for the special, but they get a whole bin of live rabbits. They aren't dead,
I remember that one.
and no one in the restaurant is willing to kill them, except ironically Nicholas Brendan, who is the pastry chef. and it is just, it's what my wife kept quoting to me while I was trying to just butcher this rabbit. So, we've digressed enough for this start.
So what are we drinking?
Well, hold on. I have one thing I've been up to.
Oh no,
Um,
tell me what you're up to. Sorry.
so episodes and episodes and episodes ago, I talked about how my wife had bought me these like color packs that you throw into fires and change the color of the fire like magically.
Oh yeah.
And I never used them because they were really cool and I was always like saving them for a cool moment. But I read this thing about at the new year about like a big problem with millennials is that they don't use any of their nice stuff because they're always saving it for like a special occasion, but we never actually really get special occasions.
Yeah.
Um, and
Okay, that sounds fair.
and it was like, and a lot of things have an expiration date or a best by date. So by the time we actually get to enjoy them, they're not as good as they should have been, or they've just expired. And so my thing in 2022 has been to just drink that nice bottle, eat that nice thing. You know what I mean? Because, like, it's very
Mm-hmm.
true for me. I've been sitting on, like, special bottles of wine for so long, they're probably not even good anymore. Like, it's not all wine ages.
No, you have to like take special care of wine.
Yeah, so like I was like I'm gonna do this, and so I've been doing it. I've been really keeping up on it, and I started throwing the packs in the fire, and they are awesome. Highly, highly recommend. I will find out the exact brand name, and I'll put it on the page or on the gram or something like that. But
Hmm.
it's very cool to just throw it in and have the fire be like green and blue and purple. It's,
How long does it last?
um, at least 30 minutes, I'd say.
Oh wow. Oh, so
Yeah.
I always thought it would just be like a quick like flash of
No.
it.
Yeah, no, it's not a flash. Like it lasted for a decent amount. I think I threw two packs in because it was indoors and we had a pretty we have a big fireplace. So I threw two packs in and it was like it was on for a while. It was really cool ambiance and they are not expensive. So if you're looking to add just a
Nice.
little bit of spooky atmosphere to your, already kind of cool and spooky fire, you can do some indoor or out, and you don't even have to open them or worry risking yourself exposing yourself to the chemicals. You throw the whole pack in.
Hmm.
Um, Pretty cool.
I love it.
So, what are you drinking?
Night I had a whiskey sour, which I picked for the reason that I've just never had one. Just never thought to have one. And I bought like a box of sour mix when I
Ooh,
went to the liquor store and I just like started buying a bunch of random stuff because I was like I want to have more random mixers and things
well, it makes it
in
easier
the
to do the
house.
drinks for these, because
Right.
how often do we talk about I wanted to do X, but I didn't have it in the house?
That was exactly why. So I made myself a whiskey sour. Oh, actually, I have a funny story. But I'll get to that. So I made myself a whiskey sour, which is one jigger of whiskey, which is an ounce and a half or one shot glass, one jigger of cold water, one packet of whiskey sour mix. I just bought a big box of them. You mix those together, you stir it with ice, then pour it into a glass and enjoy. It's sour. I talked about last week that the drink I had was too sour. This was just the right amount of sour. It cuts the whiskey so it doesn't have that super strong whiskey taste if you're not a big fan of just straight whiskey, which I don't know, not too many people are. I like it, but I know that's not for everybody. So it was really enjoyable. It was a good little sipper. So recommend the whiskey sour. And this might be another digression. My daughter has had a bad cold the last couple of weeks, and we've had to convince her to drink her medicine. And one of the big things for her right now is making everything a competition. So it's always a race, or mostly races because she's 4. That's what she understands. So we're mostly racing places. So to get her to do her medicine, she and I would race drinking medicine. So my medicine was just Sprite and grenadine in a little cup, and she was drinking cough syrup, and it would get her to do to take her medicine, even though she really didn't want to take it. So that's going to be my recommendation. Have a little grenadine and Sprite in the house, and you can use that to race your kids to make them to do healthy things, and you get a little treat.
Okay.
Good story, right? Yes,
And
Sam. Very good story.
so, how did you like it? My wife, her family, I do not know why, always has whiskey sours on Christmas Day.
Interesting. It's like
Yes.
just their tradition. You don't know. It didn't come from anything.
I don't know. If I know, I forget.
I liked it. I would definitely recommend having a whiskey sour. It was a nice little. It's a nice end of the day. I finished dinner. I'm sitting. I'm just like next to my television, staring off into the middle distance and
Hmm.
sipping a drink, sort of drink.
Okay. I like whiskey sours. They're not my favorite, but they definitely go down well. For me, I did Alfred Hitchcock's favorite cocktail. I found out was called the White Lady, um,
Ooh.
which is 2 ounces of gin, 1 ounce of Cointreau or Cointreau.
I don't know how to say it. I've seen it written, but I do not know
Yeah,
how to pronounce
I've
that
never
word.
heard it pronounced in my life, and I used to tend bar. Apparently, due to a lot of these recipes, you can substitute triple sec, but the traditional recipe is with Cointreau. And then 1 ounce of fresh lemon juice. Now, you garnish that with a lemon twist or a lemon slice, and optional is 1 egg white to make it like frothy and translucent, which is a very old school way to make a cocktail.
Mm-hmm. I don't know that I've ever had a cocktail with an egg in it.
I don't believe I have. I've seen it done tons of times, but I don't think I've ever actually had one. I imagine the alcohol kills everything in the egg.
It's
It gives
gotta
it
be
that
safe. People
foam
do
and
it.
stuff. Yeah, I mean, Food Network lets people make them and to show you how to make them without a disclaimer, so it's got to be safe.
Oh, I believe
Because
that.
like even half of what Alton Brown does like gets a disclaimer. Uh,
Oh, like, oh, you need to cook to this temperature if you're
Yeah,
gonna do
ideally
this,
you
blah blah
need to
blah.
cook all pork to 180, but blah blah blah. Like he has like the legal goons that come on and make him give like PSAs, and then he's just like, but it's ridiculous. No one's gotten X disease in over 100 years. Like lick the damn batter. Um,
It's so telling people not to eat the batter. It's ridiculous.
I
Because
mean,
everybody does that.
yeah, it's literally the best part. It's why I bake. I bake not so I can have brownies, but so I can lick the brownie bowl. Like.
Hmm. That's the only reason. That's why we're alive. I mean, like, that's why we're alive.
It is. I would just like some people get like just cookie dough, and I'm like, no, just like do that, but with batter. Like,
Hmm.
okay, so this week we read a book that we talked about many episodes ago now, over the
Hmm.
summer when we did our episode on the sea, which I think was one of our first 5 episodes. I could
Oh yeah, that
easily
was very
confirm
early
that,
on.
but I won't.
Oh.
Why would I make us all sit through that again? I could have had all of this information ready to go. But it was episode
Because
6. Episode 6, The Sea, we discussed this because my book was in a collection of stories by Alfred Hitchcock, and I noticed that the man who had written it wrote another series that Hitchcock uh, was in charge of called The Three Investigators. And after he wrote the short story, he ended up writing that series for Alfred Hitchcock. So we read the first book in the Three Investigators series, which I read
yes,
as a child, but Sam had never even heard of until I dropped this bomb on him.
I had never heard of it, and I from just quick research on it that I've done, I did not realize there was a lot of these.
There's a ton of these, and I didn't
There's
realize there was two
56
movies.
books. Oh, I only saw that there was one movie. I didn't realize there was two.
There are
There's one movie on Disney Channel. Did we even say the name of the book? The name of the book is The Secret of Terror Castle.
yeah,
Did we
book
say that?
number one, The Secret of Terror Castle.
The Three Investigators, Alfred Hitchcock Children's Mystery Series. Just a wild thing.
Originally known as Alfred Hitchcock and the Three Investigators, which is actually the edition I had growing up. So yeah, there was two movies. The first movie, ironically, wasn't Terror Castle, but the second movie was, even though it was like all the same characters and actors and stuff.
Hmm.
They did a later book first.
Okay.
So I the book starts off with an introduction from Alfred Hitchcock. But it's not like a general introduction by Alfred Hitchcock because Alfred Hitchcock is actually a character in these books. And so the introduction is written by Alfred Hitchcock, the character from the books, not the actual man, which I thought was a fun touch.
Hmm. So Alfred Hitchcock is a person in the universe of these books, and he is this. It opens up with him introducing like these kids. These kids are wacky, crazy, and they
I
solve
lost
mysteries.
I lost a bet and now with these kids and now I have to do this introduction. You should skip it, he says.
Yeah, he's just. It's funny. Yeah, it's a funny introduction because Alfred Hitchcock is basically saying like, "Hey, you don't need to bother reading this because this book is written for 10-year-olds." And I think he knows that they're not going to read the introduction. I definitely always skipped over the introduction when I was that age. And
I
also, you're not
always
going to know who
did.
Alfred Hitchcock is.
But I'm pretty sure I read the introductions as a kid for this one because I knew who Alfred Hitchcock was. Because I didn't ever like Nick at Night or any of those old shows, but I think on like Fridays, there was like the Alfred Hitchcock hour on Nick at Night. And he had that really awesome opening where like he walks into the shadow of himself and stuff.
Oh yeah.
And so I was really into like the concept of staying up late to watch Alfred Hitchcock's spooky stories. Which I never like did, but I would always try and sneak down and watch them because my dad watched them. And so I was really excited to get like Alfred Hitchcock books and stuff. And then I think this is the only series I've ever actually read the intro to. As a kid.
Mm.
As an adult, I read a lot of intros. So the premise of this book is there are three I don't think we ever get their ages. They seem like they're like 13, 14,
Yeah, I'd
maybe?
say early teens.
Early
Yeah,
teens, late tweens.
I read in the information about it. It's not stated, I think, until a much later book, so it's not said in
But
this how old they are.
they it's three kids. Jupiter Jones, which is just such a strong name.
Wasn't
P
that the name of the character in Jupiter Ascending too?
was it? I mean, again, this is
Do
a
you ever see Jupiter
quick.
Ascending?
I Was it Jupiter Rising? No, that's Mercury
No,
Rising.
Jupiter
Jupiter
Ascending.
Ascending. I'm aware of it,
Mila
but no, I
Kunis.
never saw it.
Yeah, Jupiter Jones was the name of Mila Kunis's character in Jupiter. Don't see that movie; it was terrible. I just thought that was kind of funny.
Okay. So yeah, Jupiter Jones, Peter Crenshaw, and Bob Andrews. Like the such strong yet so white names. Like these are all old man names now, and that makes sense because this is like the 60s or 70s. This was the 60s. So these three kids basically they hang out in a junkyard that one of their uncles owns and they've like patched together a headquarters and have decided to go into business as investigators solving mysteries. And they decide their first mystery will be finding a real haunted house because Alfred Hitchcock mentioned he wanted to shoot his next picture in an actual haunted house.
Let's back it up a little bit
Okay.
because you missed, I think, my favorite part of the setup. Jupiter in a
I knew you were
in a
gonna let
con
this slide.
no, Jupiter in a contest with a car rental service has a valet who works for just who he like has a valet for a month who drives the three children around in a Rolls Royce. I'm like
A gold-plated
a
Rolls
gold
Royce.
plated Rolls Royce. So these are three like scrappy young kids, like your Hardy Boy ripoff type kids, who are getting chauffeured around Los Angeles in a golden Rolls Royce. So people that like this comes up as a plot point. People know who they are because it was in the news that they won the contest. I'm like, this contest is amazing. It was just like counting jelly beans in a jar. And Jupiter was smart enough to figure out the exact number of jelly beans in that jar, so he now has his own chauffeur.
You know, I wasn't impressed by Jupiter. He spent 3 days staring at that jar, figuring out how many, like, marbles or whatever were in it. That, like,
It seems like simple math, but
it.
I bet it's harder than it. I think this would be a good game show. I think there should be a game show of people figuring out how many things are in another thing.
But yeah, my point is, you can walk up and kind of do quick math and be like, it's this rough bulb. You don't need 3 days. Anyone who has the time to sit in front of one of these jars for 3 days can figure that out. Anyway,
It was a successful advertisement campaign if it was like made the
everyone
local
knew.
news.
Yeah,
If
everyone was just
everybody in
like,
Los Angeles knows, it's a major news outlet. Like that's pretty big news.
so he has
Kid
30
guesses number.
he has 30 days with this thing, and they burn through like a week and a half, I think, in this book. They still have it for the next two or three books, if I remember correctly. It's been a while.
Yeah, I was again maybe getting a little ahead of myself. It's like I was into this book enough and that I want to know what happens to these kids next because I want to see how long they have this chauffeur for and if they like come up with some cockamamie reason for them to continue having this chauffeur after the end of the contest because it was pretty convenient that they just like get moved around places.
I did read, I think, like the first 10 books in this series, and I enjoyed it for a while. Not recently, again, as a kid, but it was, they kept it going, like, logically. Like, it worked within its own universal logic.
Hmm.
So, also, Jupiter Jones was a former child actor named Baby Fatso.
That was a fun little plot. Like that's I like that they put that in there. It does not really come up that much in the book. It's something that Alfred Hitchcock puts in his introduction. It's like, oh, this makes this character seem so much more full and
Yeah.
alive.
The only time he ever does any like acting is when he's impersonating Alfred Hitchcock's nephew to get in to see him.
Hmm.
And like that's it. Like it's not a huge like part of the book. It's just these are fully fleshed characters. Like Bob Andrews works at the library. Like he has a day job as like a 13-year-old while also solving mysteries and stuff. And he's got a leg brace, which doesn't always come in to play, but again, it just makes him like an actual character. Um,
It makes
yes,
for a good reason for them to split up at times.
yes, they get separated and split up for different reasons like that, and take on different roles that like make sense. Like Bob does a lot more of the research because he can't be like running and jumping because he's got a leg brace, etc. So they trick, they talk their way in to see Alfred Hitchcock and basically offend him into hiring them to investigate this castle, which,
Pretty clever.
pretty clever, I guess. It was just like
Maybe
it's
not.
so
It's not.
much.
That's not life advice. Don't go and insult
It's
famous
very
directors.
boomer life advice. Honestly, I kept thinking that, and I was like, it's true because these are like kids that grew up to be boomers. But it's very much like just you walk in that front door and you tell them you want a job and you don't back down until you walk out with that job. And I'm like, nowadays you would get arrested. But this is just that mentality.
Yeah, you can't go like barge into M. Night Shyamalan's house and be like, "I'm gonna find a haunted house for you." He
I'm
would
going
be
to
like,
do
"You
bad
are getting arrested."
impersonations of you until you hire me to do until you hire me to find a haunted house.
Yeah, and M. Night Shyamalan is just gonna be like, "I am going to play along, and as soon as you're out of my sight, I am going to call the police." So don't break into any horror directors' houses. That's my recommendation. Don't take that lesson from this book. That's a bad lesson.
Yeah.
But it works out for these three.
Yeah, and so one of the big plot points of these books is that Jupiter is like a genius, but he never tells anyone his plans. So a lot of the time you're all in the dark as to what the hell he's on about. And so he already has a house picked out, and it's this old Hollywood horror movie, silent film era Boris Karloff type of guy who was like the man of a thousand faces, who got knocked out of the game when talkies came around. And I looked him up, and there was an actor who was big in the 60, up to the 60s by that name, but not the same actor.
Okay, so they like stole an actual actor's name and made a new character out of him.
Yes, but like a completely different character. Like this
Hmm.
character, like it almost seems like Alfred Hitchcock just didn't know that there was an actor with that name.
That's probably it.
Because I looked up, I was like, I wonder if this was like a real guy, and they did like a maybe he isn't dead type of a book. But no, no, they made it up, which was a little sad. But he made like a giant. He built a castle with his money from making horror movies, and he built like a horror movie castle, and then
What you do? I think you do.
became a recluse after he couldn't act anymore, and then eventually killed himself and swore he would haunt the place. And so there's been tons of stories of hauntings ever since about the castle, and no one can spend a night there because it's too terrifying. So they're clearly going to do this.
I mean, you have to, right? I mean, that's the plan.
That is the plan.
So they sneak themselves into Terror Castle. Again, they are chauffeured there um by their gold-plated Rolls Royce. I'm trying to remember the exact order of events. They go in, they start investigating, and of course, immediately they're terrified because there are obvious signs of ghosts, like whispers in the hallways, or they find at different points like a casket with a skeleton in it, um, which scares them, and they leave.
I think,
They
yeah,
get waylaid.
there's also, we skipped over, they have a weird foil
Oh yeah, Skinny, was that his name?
named Skinny, who's like a 13-year-old who has his own car and driver's license because his dad lives in like Louisiana or something where you can, back in the day, get a driver's license at like 13. And
That
so,
felt a little bit made up. I don't think that's to be true. Well, I guess it's the
but we also don't
'60s.
know how old they are.
Oh, that's true.
But
Yeah, this could
anyway,
be like an adult man who's attacking children.
yeah, they have this foil who's thinks he's smarter than them and he's just out to ruin their lives. He has no clear goal.
He attacks them pretty viciously, like by like starting at a rock avalanche. There's a lot of stuff that happens in this like 100-page book.
No, I thought he didn't
Starts.
start the avalanche. They thought he did. Did you not finish the book?
No, I read the whole book. Maybe
Um,
I misunderstood this part.
they suspect he caused the avalanche, but it turns out it was that other guy later.
Oh, right. Should we talk about him? Oh, we're doing a terrible
We're
job
doing a
explaining this book.
terrible job. So for a while they think this kid is trying to kill them though, and they're like, "It's fine. We'll deal with that later."
Yeah,
Like
they're not nearly concerned enough about the one guy trying to kill them. Like,
like
they should go
people
to the police.
clearly try and murder them multiple times and they just carry on.
Anyway, so they're investigating this house. That's the important thing. They're investigating this house. It's a big Scooby Doo style haunted mansion. I really do like the way that the way that it's described because it is really right in the right um level of a spooky description for your average preteen who's going to be picking this book up. You gotta this is kind of like in your Hardy Boys or Nancy Drew vein. Like it was something that was trying to be on that um in that sphere, but I don't think it never really got the same notoriety as those series. You know, the your average person is not aware of the three investigators, but I did really appreciate the way they described this haunted castle. It's a very good early spooky type story. It's the sort of place where you've got uh, knight armor, you know, like medieval knight armor that collapses on people. It's got a
Paintings with the
haunted
eyes that you can see
paintings of the
through.
eyes. All the stuff that you see in a Scooby Doo is being described here, and I really do appreciate it because it's that nice mild spooky to look for kids stuff. So definitely a good spooky introduction. There is Rex. Oh, now I what was his full name?
Oh, the
Shoot.
guy with the throat?
Yeah,
So it's the dead man's former agent. I don't have the book with me right now.
his name is Rex.
They call him the Whisperer for most
The
of the book, is
Whisperer.
the thing. So I don't remember his last name because for the most of the book he's the Whisperer because he has a big scar going down his throat that makes him have like a creepy, raspy voice.
He's another interesting character, and he has my all-time most feared hobby of he keeps birds.
Oh, I forgot you hated
He
birds.
raises, yeah,
He
no, he
raises
raises
parakeets.
parakeets.
They're just little bit budgies, man.
Yeah, again, I don't like parakeets. Again, a little like just a very specific thing that I think makes the characters in this story feel so much more real. Um, because yeah, here's this guy named Rex. He has a big scar across his throat, but he's a nice fella and he raises birds. And this is just one of a couple of characters that they interact with over the course of the story. Um, but they're in a race against the clock because Alfred Hitchcock's movie scouts are going around the world. They're in England, they're in New England, both Englands, um, and they are looking for the right haunted house for Alfred Hitchcock's movie. So there's this ticking clock where they really need to prove that this house is haunted, which is why they keep going back there. It's an interesting thing where they have to keep sending themselves back into danger so they can impress Alfred Hitchcock, so Alfred Hitchcock will vouch for them as investigators. It's a pretty convoluted plot now that I'm saying it all out
Yeah,
loud.
there's a
Like it's such a
lot in this book. We're simplifying it a lot, but there's a lot going on in the plot. There's twists and just like it's only a 108-page book, including the introduction and the cover and stuff. But
it's
it
also one of the it all the chapters end on like one third of a page. You have like a full blank page just taking room.
yeah,
This book is not 100 pages.
yeah, it is a probably 75-page book that they somehow fit a lot of content into.
Yeah. Are we gonna tell the whole story? Like, are we gonna do we want to like ruin the ending of this book?
No, no, go read it. It's a fun little mystery. It has a lot of tropes, but like back before they were tropes, like, the tropes that Alfred Hitchcock and those type of people laid down and made the norm.
Hmm.
So,
But
they have a weird Scooby-Doo mystery where they're trying to figure out, is this house really haunted? What's going on? A lot of mysterious characters and MacGuffins. I enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun. I enjoyed it as
yeah,
a kid and I enjoyed it again now.
I think as an adult, like if you're an adult and you read this as adult entertainment, you're gonna see the ending coming a mile away. But I think if you give this to um, a preteen who's interested in spooky stories, especially like sort of vintage spooky stories, you know, if you have some of those really cool preteens, uh, I think they get a big kick out of it. I think this was much better than I expected it to be. I thought it really was pretty good. I will say there is stuff, especially towards the end, that doesn't age well. And that will be
Oh
the excessive
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was
So
wondering if we were going to talk
here's
about that.
let's talk about it because I think that's the sort of stuff we have to hit on. Content warning. Um, there's a point in which the kids are being kidnapped. Let's say kidnapped or being held hostage
They get
by
captured.
get captured. There we go. We get captured by some characters that they continuously refer to as the Arab and the Oriental. And again, it's just like those words we you just wouldn't use them the way that these kids are kind of throwing those terms
And the
around.
gypsy.
The
They get
gypsy, oh, the
captured by a
gypsy,
gypsy, an Arab, and an Oriental.
Oriental. It's just like, ooh, I bet you if this book gets republished at any point, and they were being continuously published at least up through the early 2000s. Like these books remained in print for a long time. I imagine probably at that point they would have still published it with those terms, but I think if it was going to get republished now, they would be well to um, use maybe some more modern terminology. I'm not saying it needs to be woke, uh, but
But
maybe
those are
find new
typically words
words.
we don't use anymore.
Yeah, gypsy is a slur. Uh, Arab and Oriental just seem a bit. Well, I mean, uh,
Oriental, I feel
they've
like, is at this point a slur.
Oriental's a slur. Yeah, I think that's got enough of a negative connotation. Arab, yeah, I think the way that they were using it felt a little bit. It felt like a slur.
Yeah, the
So
way
you're
they
not saying
used
like,
it wasn't like an Arabic man. It was just like two Arabs.
yeah, when the way they were saying it, it definitely felt very negative. And I just don't think that's. Yeah, it's just not something you'd think of back in the 1960s. I don't think they were being offensive or attempting to be offensive in the
I think
1960s, but it's
Oriental
just
was the
outdated
appropriate
terminology.
word at the time. It's
Yeah,
one of those
I think it
things where,
fell out
like,
of fashion.
yeah, like that was the polite word, and now it doesn't hold up at all. They got
Well,
a
that's the sort of.
racist hat trick.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where gypsy was always racist. Gypsy was always a racist term. Oriental, I, I'm not qualified to speak on this. I think it's one of those where it started as just a word that gained a negative connotation over time, but it did gain a negative connotation over time, so it should be retired the way they were using it, unless you're describing a rug. Even that, I wouldn't feel comfortable. I wouldn't feel comfortable saying like Oriental rug. I just said it, but I would. I don't feel like if I was actually describing a rug, I would use those words anymore. So
Fair.
that's my one thing about the book. But again, it's a product of its time. But if it were to be republished, I think they would need to make some edits.
One of the things I liked about this book, to like flip that, is they kind of like on the sly teach you a bunch of science. Like they teach you about like whisper spots in echo rooms and stuff, and like that it's that like the curved ceiling causes sound to travel and come down, and like they kind of teach you some fun little things like that. You know what I'm saying?
No,
Like
that was really neat.
they do like sneak some like science and like just fun information in where it's like, oh,
Audio
you read,
engineering.
yeah, you learned some stuff while you read this. So, that's my one thing I did like about the series. It wasn't just like random Scooby Doo rip off the mask. Like they were like, well, this is happening because of this. This is happening because of this. Kind of like a oh god, I
Yeah,
totally just blanked on the
Jupiter,
names
oh,
from The Conjuring.
Jupiter's,
The Warrens. They kind of
Jup-
did like a Warrens thing where they're like, this smoke is coming from this. This sound is coming from this. Like,
they
go ahead.
disprove it. They're debunkers. I was gonna say Jupiter's very clever. I wonder how well his logic would hold up. I think that's sort of the funny thing about kid detectives. It's like if you really think about it, it's like, would you have really figured this out? Probably not, but it's fun. It's fun to spend. It was fun to spend 2 hours with these kids.
It's one of those things that I always hate where they solve the mystery because of some other innocuous thing that a quirky character in their life is doing. Like,
Mm.
if your uncle hadn't just randomly found a pipe organ on the side of the road and brought it home, you wouldn't have solved this mystery.
Oh yeah, it's like, wait a minute, that reminds me of the blobbity blob.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that's like a trope. And it's a trope that always bothers me. And I'm like, they're not good at what they do. They happen to have someone teach them a pertinent piece of information today.
It's like that had nothing to do with anything else that's going on. How did that work into what was happening here?
Yes, exactly. So, it's a fun little series. In this book, they're debunkers. In other books, though, there is supernatural stuff, which I also liked.
Hmm.
Like, I think it's like the third or the fourth book, they're looking for a ghost that keeps haunting this apartment complex, and it turns out, uh, someone in the apartment complex, astral projects when they're asleep, and I don't think they realize it.
Oh, so that's like full
It's
supernatural.
like full supernatural, but not in the way that it's not like a haunting. You know what I mean? It's like this guy is literally like astral projecting. So, you know, I do like that not every episode is Scooby Doo where they rip a mask off. You know what I mean?
Would like to see if I could find movies. This they don't. I don't see them. Cursory look. I don't see them streaming anywhere. They weren't on YouTube. That well, at least one of them was a Disney production. I don't see it on that. It's on Disney
They're on
Plus.
Amazon to rent, is where I found them.
So I'm never gonna watch them.
Yeah. I think they're
Never gonna happen.
German. I don't even think they're in English. I
Oh,
think
are
I
they?
think they just played on Disney Plus. I don't think they were made by Disney.
At least one of the actors is the actor who plays Bob Andrews is Cameron Monaghan, and that he's done a lot of American stuff. Yeah, he's an American actor. He was on Gotham. He was in one of the Star Wars video games.
Hmm.
He's American. But yeah, they were these books are apparently continued to get published in Germany. Like new stories of these were being published in Germany up until 2011.
Holy crap.
Yeah. Although the two that came out in 2011 might have actually just been older stories that hadn't been published, but because they were still popular enough there. Yeah, they were in yeah, two stories were published in Germany in 2011. But
Huh.
even though they were published regularly from 64 when this came out through 1990. So they had a 25, 26-year run in just their initial run. I imagine at some point they stopped, probably fairly early on, had to stop using Alfred Hitchcock.
I don't know. He
Uh,
stays their benefactor throughout like the first 10 books. It seemed like he was a pretty big part of it.
when did he die?
I mean, I'm not I'm sure they used the character, but even if the person was dead, you know what I mean? Alfred
Maybe
Hitchcock died in 1980?
80.
Yeah.
So they were still making these a solid 10, I mean, like an original run another 10 years after Alfred Hitchcock was dead. And then yeah, two more books in 2011 after he had been dead for over 30 years. Pretty amazing run for this series again that I hadn't heard of until now. They had a Find Your Fate series in the 80s, so those are yeah, that was rival of Choose Your Own Adventure. People don't realize
Mm-hmm.
that Choose Your Own Adventure is not a generic word. And then yeah, a revision from 89, revision in 89 and 90 where they were older, that they were like older teenagers. They put out a ton. From 89 to 90, they put out 11 books. Wow. So that
That's
must
a
have been like
lot.
one book a yeah, it was probably like a book a month. I think that's how they did Goosebumps.
That is how they did Goosebumps. It's almost like Goosebumps picked up the steam after this stopped.
Yeah.
Cashed in on a hole in
So
the market.
a robust series. I mean, we're talking over 50 books in this series. So like a real like if you wanted to like sit down and really like take a deep dive, you could spend some time reading the Three Investigators books. Maybe we will. I would definitely check out for a future episode something from the later books.
Yeah, I think I would like to do like a jump to the 80s and see what's up.
Yeah, so it's just like Bob is wearing parachute pants and
Well, that's one of the
Jupiter has
things.
like feathered out hair.
Do they update is a question that I'm curious about. Or are they trapped in the 60s?
We're gonna find out. Tune back into a future episode of Raising Those Spirits where we're gonna take an even deeper dive into the history of the three investigators.
There's definitely more to this well. Apparently the movie is very different. So we could also do a movie comparison if we ever wanted to actually, if it
Yeah, if
ever
we get
did
a
come to something like Netflix or Disney Plus or whatever.
oh yeah, if I could get a hold of it, I'll totally watch it.
Cool.
Oh,
All
you
right.
know what? Here, I'm on the Wikipedia. It says first 30 books were called Alfred Hitchcock and the Three Investigators, and then from 31 on, it was just the Three Investigators. So that makes sense because the 30th book came out in 79 and the 31st book came out in 81. So 79, then 80, Hitchcock dies. Then 81, they relaunch without the Hitchcock branding.
Makes sense.
So I bet you it was probably that 31st. Yeah, so it would be that 31st book that he probably was not in. And we'll let you know when we get up to book 31. Sit down and read these books and watch the movies.
Perfect. You got anything more on this?
No, I just definitely worth checking out.
Yeah, I do recommend, and I think the thing is like I think it's still accessible to kids. Like they understand it's a
Yeah.
period piece and they don't have like cell phones and stuff. But like even when I was a kid in like the 90s, I understood that this was older. You know what I mean? So
Hmm.
I feel like you can kind of put yourself back. Like for my kid, it might be more like Huck Finn, but it's still like you can get into that. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Cool. What have you been doing with your adult time?
What have I been doing with my adult time? Not going to a movie prop store. And I should have thought about this question before you asked
I'll
it.
go
It has
first.
been a. Yeah, you go
If you want
first.
to sit on it.
Let me sit on it for a minute.
So my wife and I every few months, whenever we finish like a big thing and we don't know what we want to do next, so I finally finished Horizon Forbidden West. And so we're trying to figure out what we want to do next. So what we like to do is like we'll look at like our Hulu account and be like, we have 20 shows we haven't started yet. Let's watch the pilot of like 5 of them and make sure and see what we're into. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So I finally watched the pilot of Only Murders in the Building, which I loved.
Really good.
Really good. It was a mistake though, because I had actually just watched the pilot of Castle Rock,
Hmm.
which I enjoyed, but I was like, all right, I don't want to like go to bed all wound up. I'll watch the first episode of Only Murders in the Building. That's a comedy. I'll like relax. And we watched it and we loved it, but we were so wound up after it, and it did not help me sleep at all. But I did enjoy it a lot.
No.
And the next day, I was like in the shower, and I had like a huge aha moment, very much like in the show, in the pilot. And so like we've been thinking about it a lot. So I watched the pilot of Only Murders in the Building, the pilot of Castle Rock, and the pilot of The Strain, the old Guillermo del Toro vampire show,
Oh, okay. Yeah,
which
I remember when that came out.
I watched the pilot when it came out, enjoyed it, never followed up on it, and then just rewatched it. My wife did not like it. I did, so I think I might continue it. But we did enjoy Castle Rock. But I feel like both of those shows could go sideways really quickly. I
Yeah. My
all
wife watched all of Castle Rock, and she enjoyed Castle Rock. I think it's a good show. It's got a lot of good people. I think it's got at least one Skarsgård in it.
it does as Bill Skarsgård. It has a really good cast, and it has The thing is, I like Stephen King, but I'm not like a massive Stephen King fan, and I know there is a ton of Easter eggs that I'm missing. You know what I mean? Because I've already caught a bunch of them, and I'm like, if I've caught these, how much have I missed?
Oh yeah.
Like, my wife's pointed out most of them, and she likes Stephen King less than me. So, I'm probably not enjoying it to its fullest, but I am enjoying it. I also, last time we had an episode, we talked about like how did they do Grimm's fairy tales when we were kids? So I've started going down a
Hmm.
rabbit hole of that. And I rewatched Teeny Tiny and the Witch Woman, which is free on YouTube right now. It's not the edition I remember fully watching as a child. I'm having trouble finding that one, but this is an edition I watched. And my wife and me like sit across from each other so she can't see my screen. And I watched it with my son who loved it. My wife was like, "What are you watching? It sounds so creepy." And it is. It's genuinely unnerving. It's like 10 minutes long. I recommend you check it out. But I'm going down this Brothers Grimm hole fairly slowly, but I'm finding that like I think Brothers Grimm is just Brothers Grimm. Like
Just just dark.
it's just dark and spooky. There was so much atmosphere to this 10-minute little like kids movie I used to rent that I'm gonna go deeper. I'm enjoying it, but I'm like, okay, yeah, this is genuinely just like freaky. My son at one point took a break. He paused it and went and watched some Bluey, and then we came back and we finished it.
This is too much for me. I'm out of here. I'm
I'm
a
only
child.
two, yeah. So yeah, I've been going down that. I'm gonna keep giving updates, and maybe we'll even, patch together an episode about it eventually.
So I don't know how I. So here's my thing. I don't know how I got onto this initially. I
Hmm.
think because I love to watch a lot of old like TV show intros on YouTube. Like if you, I found all these compilations of old like, oh, all the TV shows that aired for the first time in 1987. Like here's all the intros from them. And from there, I ended up on this YouTube channel called Fuzzy Memories TV. It's the Museum of Classic Chicago Television. It's just like uploads of local Chicago TV where I've only ever been to Chicago one time, but uploads of Chicago television from the 70s and 80s that they must just like find on old like VHS tapes. And some of it's really wild. Like I found a Halloween special. I was like, oh, cool, like a local access 1980s Chicago Halloween special. And it's just this religious guy yelling at the screen about the evils of Halloween.
Oh my
And it
God.
is one of the strangest things. Like I could only watch a couple of minutes of it because it was just too weird. Um, but yeah, definitely go on to YouTube and try and find old local Halloween specials. That's going to be, I think, one of my new projects. Leading up to actual Halloween. So this was called, yeah, WCFC Channel 38, the Eagle's Nest Halloween Special, and it is strange.
Okay.
I'm not going to tell you to watch it because it's really just this like strange man in a mustache yelling about Halloween from a graveyard. It looks like it might be a real graveyard. I don't know if it actually is. But it's just some of the strangest like vintage YouTube content I could possibly come across. And this is what I do in my spare time because I am a broken human.
From the wild west of the internet.
Yeah. Some weird stuff on YouTube.
Cool. All right. I think that's a good place to end it. Go
Yeah,
down
let's
the
call it
YouTube
there. No,
hole.
go to yo, dude. That's what I'm gonna do when I get off this call. I'm gonna crawl in front of my television and pass out while watching weird YouTube videos of local Chicago television.
Perfect. All right. Well, I'm Steve.
I'm Sam.
Sam, where can they find us? You plugged us earlier, but do it one more time.
RT Spirits Pod on your various internet platforms.
Send us your pastel Halloween ideas.
And let us know if you have any cool stuff you think we should cover in the future. We'd love to hear it.
All right. Thanks for joining us.
Night.
Good night.